From a weird underground bunker with terrible secrets to sightings of clowns in the forest of South Carolina, here are 10 of the creepiest things ever found in the woods. Number 10. Underground bunker. Somewhere deep in the spooky forests of northern Germany, there's a remarkably creepy thing sitting alone and abandoned. You might even miss it at first sight. The only sign that something's there are pipes sticking out of the ground. Nobody knew what the pipes were for until some friends discovered an underground bunker and broke through the door using a crowbar. Inside, they found what appeared to be some sort of abandoned underground hospital. There was graffiti inside, halls filled with nothing but peeling green walls, and lots of piping. They even found a nice message written on one of the walls that said, "Hello, Satan, I love you." Oh yeah, and it stank like a sewer. That was because some of the corridors were flooded. It seemed that under the Woodland area was an entire complex deep underground, long since abandoned and apparently forgotten. Nobody even knew what it was used for. Still, it's a great place to toss a body. It's also one of the last places anyone would want to spend the night alone. Who knows what kind of horrible experiments went on inside the place. Number 9. Woodland Stalker. In Switzerland, their Bigfoot is a little different. For the past 10 years, there's been a ghost wandering around a secluded patch of woodland. This ghost has been called le Loyon and has been spotted wearing a military uniform, a thick coat, and a gas mask. And for the first time, he's been photographed. The guy doesn't seem aggressive or dangerous, but police are still looking for him to try and discourage him from creeping around the area and freaking people out. He's been spotted multiple times in the forests of Meul in the west of Switzerland for over 10 years, but nobody has any idea where he lives or what exactly he's doing. In fact, it's hard to say if the guy is even alive or not. The photograph came from an unnamed photographer who encountered the man in the woods. He tried to speak with him, but the man turned his back and then walked away in silence. He wore a military cape, military boots, and an army-issued gas mask. It doesn't really get much creepier than that. There's no way to contact the guy, and no matter how hard the authorities try to track him down, he's simply too elusive. But then again, ghosts usually are. Number 8. Satanic Ritual. In Ellicott City, something horrifying was discovered in an already spooky wooded area. It all happened on a Halloween night behind the Ellicott City Elementary School. It wasn't toilet paper thrown in the trees or smashed pumpkins. It was the leftovers of a satanic ritual. There were 6 dead animals discovered behind the school in a sheltered area of forest, according to the local Howard County Police. Apparently, the cops had to drive around the small residential neighborhood questioning people to see if their cats had been stolen. It looked like 2 of the animals had been roadkill, but the other 4 had met rather unfortunate ends. And even though satanic worship isn't technically a crime, it's still a pretty disturbing thing to be doing in the woods, especially near a school. There were 2 raccoons, 2 cats, and 1 rabbit arranged in a pentagram, and a groundhog had been put in the center. There was also a note found underneath the groundhog with some pretty disturbing things written on it. Even though the principal of the school said that it was probably a prank, it very well could have been a psychotic group of Satanists. It's definitely not something you want to find when wandering about by yourself on a Halloween night. Number 7. Mysterious Wooden Cabin. A man in California stumbled upon a very real nightmare while wandering around the Arcata Community Forest. He'd been marking the trees to be harvested when something out of the usual caught his attention. He knew it hadn't been there the last time he was in the area, so he pushed through the woods to check it out. The day then turned into something out of the Blair Witch Project. Huddled in the forest was a makeshift cabin, and one of the creepiest things a person can find when alone in the wilderness. It was clearly illegal and located in one of the remotest regions of the area. The cabin was professionally constructed with a ceiling about 15 feet high and a sturdy foundation. It was no squatter shack. It was even fully stocked with a stove, a small library, and a bed. The authorities eventually came to investigate, but nothing definitive about the cabin owner's identity was found, though they did find 2 different driver's licenses. So they left the guy an eviction notice. When they returned sometime later, they found the entire structure disassembled and gone, with a squatter symbol on the ground in charcoal. Not even a nail was left behind. Now that's some spooky stuff. Number 6. Graveyard for the Mentally Insane. Deep in the woods of New York, near the Pomona and Stony Point area, there's an old and worn trail. If you were to follow this trail, you'd find yourself surrounded by tall, naked trees. If you follow the trail far enough into the wilderness, you'll come upon a clearing, then to a cemetery. And while all cemeteries are pretty creepy, especially at night, it's something altogether horrifying to find one in the middle of an already spooky forest. To make matters worse, the cemetery is full of stubby gray crosses. There are only a handful of gravestones, but there are hundreds and hundreds of makeshift crosses, and instead of names, the crosses are marked only with numbers. As it turns out, the cemetery in the forest was used by Letchworth Village, which had been founded in 1911 as a state institution for the feeble-minded. That means that the graveyard contains the bodies of the mentally ill. There are about 900 people buried in the woods from between 1917 and 1967. As for the mental hospital, it's now an abandoned ruin, basically in the middle of the forest. Number 5. Tongues nailed to trees. In Brooklyn's Prospect Park, a rather disturbing discovery has been found. This happened a few years ago, but it's still a pretty creepy story. It happened in Peninsula Meadow, slightly north of Prospect Lake. 15 calf tongues were found nailed to the trees. When it comes to creepy things in the woods, nothing is worse than organs nailed to trees. The tongues appeared to come from a butcher shop, and they were all nailed to different trunks, hanging about 6 feet off the ground. According to officials from the Parks Department, the reason for the tongues being nailed to the trees was a complete mystery. However, it's not unheard of for some fringe religious groups to participate in rituals in which animal tongues are nailed to trees. The only question remaining is which cult or religious psychos were using Prospect Park for their ritual, and what kind of horrendous black magic were they practicing? Number 4. Creepy wooden statues. There's a place in Japan you probably don't want to find yourself lost. It's located in the Toyama Prefecture, and it's undoubtedly the creepiest place in the entire country. The village is overgrown, empty of people, and filled with roughly 800 human sculptures. Supposedly, the sculptures were created by a Japanese artist who wanted to make the park a popular destination for tourists to go and relax. The park was filled with 800 completely different stone statues, hiding in the grass and peering at you from under the trees. While most of them are carved into the likeness of the Buddha, there are also some human statues in there. Despite the fact that the statues were originally designed to make people feel relaxed, too much time has passed and they've begun to decay. The result is a horribly creepy vibe. This is especially true if you end up in the park alone as the sun is setting and you have 800 pairs of creepy eyes watching your every move. I'd recommend taking a trip to Disneyland rather than the creepy woodland park full of disturbing statues. Number 3. Clowns in South Carolina. In Greenville County, South Carolina, the most terrifying thing in the world has been spotted in the forest. Apparently, in the woods near some popular apartment buildings, there's a trail that leads to an abandoned home sitting on the edge of a pond. And according to CBS News, children are claiming there are clowns living in the abandoned home. The report of clowns has not been substantiated as of yet, but there was a police report recently that described a suspicious man dressed in a circus clown outfit with white paint on his face trying to entice children to follow him into the forest. It doesn't get much creepier or horrifying than that. It's like something from the Stephen King novel, It. Another incident involved a boy claiming that he spotted clowns in the woods whispering and making strange noises. Other children reported clowns showing them large amounts of money in an effort to entice them into the forest. This went on for over 2 weeks, with multiple clown sightings, including one clown supposedly standing at the edge of the woods and taking pictures of the local kids. However, no matter how many times the police searched the woods and the abandoned house, they could find no trace of any clowns. Number 2. Abandoned church. Deep in the forest of Lincoln County in northern Wisconsin, there's a creepy and abandoned Estonian church originally built in 1914. Apparently, the cemetery near the church had already been in use back in 1909, and so you know the entire area is just littered with bodies. The church is far from any road, and the entire area was apparently abandoned sometime after the 1950s. Someone who snapped some photos of this creepy church back in 2013 and posted them online said that the entire area is so overgrown that the only way to reach the cemetery is to hunt through the trees behind the church, where you can find some gravestones sticking out of the ground. If you were thinking about taking a camping trip in Lincoln County, I'd seriously think again. While the decaying Estonian church might seem like a cool place to spend the weekend with some friends, you probably don't want to be there when the sun goes down and the shadows come out. Number 1. Missing person signs. A hiker minding their own business in the remote woods near New York has found possibly the most disturbing thing in the forest yet. As usual, I've saved the most nightmarish discovery for last. Churches, clowns, and graveyards are all spooky, but this is spooky in a murdery sort of way. The guy hiking in the woods stumbled upon dozens of missing person signs nailed to trees in a remote patch of the forest. And while this itself would be enough to make me turn around and run screaming away, the guy also found a makeshift cage built of sticks. The hiker was kind enough to upload the video online, and in the video you can hear him uttering some pretty nasty profanities. And you probably would too. The guy even found cans of food and an old worn blanket. It looked to be the murder location of some kind of notorious serial killer. Thankfully, it was found out later that the scene was actually set up full of props. After the guy notified the police, they notified him that the homeowner of the nearby property had set up the scene for a Halloween party, and that the posters would be taken down later. Nonetheless, stumbling upon all these posters and the makeshift wooden cage without knowing it was all fake would be enough to make the average person poop their pants. Which of these discoveries is the creepiest of all? And which would you like to visit if you had the chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to come back soon for more amazing videos right here on American Eye.